Hello, and welcome back to Beric Saga. And I'm going to just quickly throw another thing on the stack of three houses similarities. Apparently, starting from now or so, a whole bunch of the side quests are closely tied to a specific unit that you have. And today's map is going to be about Sherlock. The first thing we do is pick up our civilian requests, and the rewards for these are just a bunch of money. As you can see, we can give back just a couple of the axes and still get our rewards there. Next up is hiring, and this time around I'm going to be hiring as many of the mercenaries with still existent happiness requirements as I can, which is all of them. In order to do that, I'm going to need to make use of the ability to inactivate units, because the number of mercenaries that I can hire has gotten extremely large and unwieldy at this point. One mercenary who I probably didn't need to hire here is Arthur, but I was planning on using him in the strategy for the upcoming map, but then it turned out that Flourish cannot be activated until turn 4, and so that kind of fell through. Unfortunately, I didn't realize this until after I had already recorded my preps, and so the hiring of him has stayed. That's alright though, because it means we have him if I end up needing him in the next map. And it's not a big deal, because money is starting to not matter too much. Something interesting about Chapter 4 is that in it you can choose to do the two side quests in either order. So I'm not sure which one is meant to be 4-1, so I've just labeled this one 4-1 in the description because it's the first one I'm doing, though do let me know if I'm wrong about that. Now, quite a few of my units got a lot of items and are looking at full inventories from the last map, and so I'm going to be trading some of those items over to Derek, who I just hired. He is obviously very unlikely to be deployed in any map ever, because he's an armored knight and this is an LTC playthrough, so I think his inventory is a perfectly good place for me to shove a bunch of things that I can't use right now. This is necessary because there is no convoy in this game, so if you have a full inventory and would pick up a new item, you have to choose something to discard, and that's something I don't really want to do. Anyway, let's move on to the map. The objective here is for Sherlock to reach the building that the boss is sitting on, and for him to seize that building. So obviously he is forced into the deployment spot that is furthest away from said building, because, you know, that's good game design. It doesn't end up mattering, but I thought that was a kind of amusing detail there. Ruby is the first to move, and she is going to be equipping her sword to fight against the many enemies who will be attacking her. Because the short sword that Ruby comes with is very weak, and I am too lazy to give her a stronger sword, she hasn't been getting as much sword weapon rank as she has spear and small shield, so I'm taking the opportunity here to start rectifying that. An interesting thing about this map is that several of the generics have powerful offensive skills, such as this guy with Desperation who attacks Ruby. He somehow manages to miss even with the extra 22 hit without Ruby activating Axebane, but because she has Axebane, she had a good chance of dodging anyway. There is another generic with a skill hiding in the fog, and he'll be very obvious when he shows up. Around this map, you can see that there are 3 houses with question marks on them, and for once I have enough turns and manpower to go and collect every single one of these side objectives. Each of them has an item in it, and though they're not particularly valuable, they're still nice to have around in case I need money. You'll also notice that I deployed Sherpa for this map, but he is not going to be doing very much. I brought him along because I need a powerful option to deal with the boss, who is extremely dodgy, and has high HP for his class archetype. And here we have the other skill that I mentioned, an enemy archer with Overwatch, who interrupts Sylvis's movement by hitting her, which is a little irritating, but it works out. In fact, because she was interrupted before I could change her weapons around, she is still strong enough to one-hit KO another enemy archer who attacks her shortly. Sherlock moves down next to the boss on this turn. Normally you would think this would be a bad idea, but part of the story of this map is that the boss is carrying around a special harp with a red string, and that string is capable of putting anyone who hears it to sleep. This is reflected in gameplay by anyone who initiates combat against the boss instantly being put to sleep and being unable to do anything at all. So in order to complete this map, we have to go through an event in which Sherlock breaks the red string, and to do that he needs to engage in a round of combat with the boss. His presence next to the boss also overrides the boss's hide skill and allows my other units to move in and attack him in later turns. You can see here that Sherlock gets a critical hit-like animation, but then does 0 damage, and that is reflecting the event that I mentioned just now. So the boss is now exposed and ready to be killed by our other units when they have time to get down here on the next turn. Ruby once again demonstrates how good she is at being bad by missing the enemy she is attacking and then killing on a follow-up attack, thus giving her extra chances at sword weapon rank. She then gains a pretty good level out of that combat too, so Ruby is continuing to progress as she needs to. So with that out of the way, I just need to get all of my units into positions for what they need to do on the subsequent turn, and that means bringing Leon and Sherpa down the cliff and into the town. Now, as I mentioned, the boss is extremely dodgy. Most of my training target units have less than 30 listed hit against him. Even Sherpa has sub 50 hit rates against him, but that doesn't matter very much because Sherpa is bringing Brim Ranger, which I will remind you is a double plus weapon, meaning that Sherpa gets 3 attacks against this boss. The boss also has the Vantage skill, which for a lot of units would mean that he would get to attack first, and if he hit, they would not be able to hit him at all. But obviously Sherpa also has counter to deal with this. If Sherpa were to miss 2 out of his 3 attacks, I would have had to go with the less reliable units just to attempt to save the run, but fortunately this time he did not have to do that. Leon dismounts and moves in to get one of the houses, and I wanted Leon to do this rather than Sylvis, because there are still enemies around, and Sylvis is going to end up killing one of them, giving her extra experience towards level 10. The enemy that she is going to kill is the priest, and she's going to get some help from Faye to do it. This priest drops an item called Smelling Salts, which is similar to the sedative that we saw back in Ruby and Arthur's side quest, except instead of curing Berserk, the Smelling Salts cure sleep, which would obviously be quite useful for this map. There are several other enemies who drop items on this map, but I'm not going to be able to get the rest of those. Now, there is one last question mark house, which Ruby is poised to get, but the enemy sitting on it is waiting until very late in the turn to take his action. And so we need to have Dean move in and attack one of the enemies with desperation. Unfortunately, RNG steps in once again and blocks him from getting the kill in possibly the most frustrating way that we've seen so far. He lands his first attack, and that attack causes the enemy to lose his grip on his weapon. And that means that he doesn't counter, so Dean does not get his follow-up attack in the desperation round. Anyway, Ruby picks up the final house containing a concoction, and then Sherlock is free to dismount and seize to complete this side quest in 3 turns. See you next time.